So I'm excited. Today's fourth session of the Grief and Bereavement Literacy series is titled Pregnancy and Infant Loss, a Misunderstood Grief. And so let me now introduce our presenters. So we have Nancy Slinn, and is going to be doing the educational presentation. And so Nancy and her husband Peter are main facilitators for the Metro Vancouver Empty Cradle Bereaved Parents Society. So Nancy grew up in the Greater Vancouver area, and after a few semesters at UBC, she couldn't pass up an opportunity to work at Expo 86. This led into a rewarding career with BC Tel. So Nancy and Peter were married in 1983. In 1988, they became the parents of Nicole, the first of 5 children. Two they have enjoyed raising, and 3 others that live on in their hearts. Their desire to give Nicole a sibling was derailed by the loss of 3 pregnancies before giving birth to Jennifer in 1996. As part of the world of bereaved parents, they have learned firsthand how to guide others along the journey towards healing that is part of pregnancy and infant loss. It has been over 28 years since the stillbirth of their daughter Angel on March 20th, 1995, but they continue this important work as a way to keep the memory of their 3 angel children alive and to give back to others in appreciation of the support they received from Empty Cradle when they were newly bereaved parents. So I'm really excited to sort of hear Nancy's story and also what she has to share. Additionally, today we have with us Nicole and Peter to speak with us about their own lived experience. So today's session will have a 15-minute presentation, educational presentation by Nancy, followed by a question and answer period from the audience, then a 15-minute discussion with those who have lived experience, and then there'll also be time for Q&A. And so Nancy has chosen not to use slides, so we will be hosting this as a meeting and not a webinar session. So on your PC, once I close the slides, there's going to be a button in the top corner of your screen where you can change the view to highlight the speaker. So we ask that you do that. And now it's my pleasure to hand the session over to Nancy.
Thanks, Josh. Hello, everyone. And thank you for allowing us the opportunity to come and share with you this morning about pregnancy and infant loss as a misunderstood grief. It's my goal that by the end of this session, you will have a clearer understanding of why it is such a misunderstood grief and a little different from most other types of grief that people may experience. Some suggestions on things not to say and examples not to give, and also, because I like to balance things, the opportunity to learn some ways of supporting people that you may encounter who have experienced a pregnancy loss. As I considered what I was going to share and how I was going to share it in the brief time we have allotted to us, I decided to take a page out of an acting class I took in university. So I'm going to invite you to get comfortable in your seats, close your eyes if you'd like, and come with me on a journey. Let's journey backwards in time to a time when you were just a little person growing up, maybe 3 or 4. A little girl playing with her dolls or having a tea party with her friends or her mom. A little boy working in the garage or in the workshop with his dad. And you look up at your parents and you think, oh my goodness, I love them so much. I want to grow up to be just like them. And as you grow, you realize they know so much. They answer all my hundreds of questions. And I can't wait till I can be just like them. And then maybe a sibling comes along and you watch your parents with that new baby and you think, oh, I get to help. I can bring diapers, or I can bring a bottle, or I can watch my sister while mommy needs to do something really quick. And oh, I think I could do this. I want to be a parent. I'm going to be the best parent in the whole world. And you're dreaming and you're planning and you're hoping, and you can't wait to grow up and meet that significant other that you want to spend the rest of your life with. And then suddenly you do. And there you are talking and planning about your future together. And of course, your future is going to include having children. And your dreams and plans and the years pass, and finally you're staring at a pregnancy test with 2 pink lines, and you think, okay, here it is. My dream is finally coming true, and I'm going to be the best parent in the whole wide world, and my children are going to be awesome, and they're going to love me, and I'm going to love them. And you're planning about which daycare to put them in and which school to enroll them in and what you're going to buy them for their first Christmas. And all these dreams are circling around the 2 of you as you plan for your future. Then you're excited to go to your first ultrasound. You've heard from your friends that ultrasounds are wonderful. You actually get to see pictures of this baby swimming inside you. But when you get there, the technician doesn't show you the screen. It's awfully quiet in the room. And she says, okay, your doctor will call you. And you wonder what's going on, but you don't feel that it's something good. Why didn't you get to see the pictures of your baby? And when your doctor calls, the doctor says, I'm really sorry. There was no heartbeat. The baby has died. Wham. All your dreams, all your plans, everything comes crashing in around you. And the doctor starts telling you about the statistics, about how many pregnancies sometimes end in loss. But you don't care about that because that was going to happen to somebody else. It wasn't going to happen to you. You did it all right. You ate well. You exercised carefully. You took such good care of yourself. You didn't smoke. You didn't drink. All the things that they told you to do were all centered around this baby, and now this baby is gone. And how are you going to deal with this grief? And you start thinking, what did I do wrong? This has to be my fault. It can't be anybody else's fault. And grandma tells you, it's okay, dear, just forget about it and move on. Lots of women had pregnancy losses when I was pregnant, and they all got over it. But that was years ago, grandma. That was a different generation. Things are different now. And friends will tell you, it's okay. You can have another baby. You're still young. I don't want another baby. I want that baby. That baby that I've dreamed about and planned for all my life. And how do you know I can have another baby? Can you guarantee that? It took me a long time to get pregnant. And actually, what you don't know is that I needed medical intervention just to get there. Now it's gone. And finally, you find a support group, and someone comes around to you and puts their arm around you and says, I'm sorry for your loss. I know what you're going through. I've been there. And the first thing I want you to know, that what happened to you was not your fault. This was not something you did or you caused. This was something that happened to you. And your baby knew that they were loved. You were the best parent to that child that you could have been under the circumstances. And yes, this is a tragic loss, and nothing will ever replace that child in your life. Even if you go ahead and have another baby, it will not be a replacement for the one you've lost. But while the grief seems overwhelming and unsurmountable right now, you will reach a point where you will be able to smile again. I know it's hard to believe. People will tell you that time heals. Not actually accurate. What time does is it puts a buffer between you and the pain. Grief takes all sorts of different ways of manifesting itself. And it will take different time lengths for different people. Some people will seem to get over things quickly. Others will take a longer time. But what I want you to know is that this baby will be a part of your life for the rest of your life. You will never forget that child. You will never forget the experience that you just went through. But over time, as you journey towards healing, you will grow stronger. You will be able to carry the grief and support yourself and other people as you journey towards a time when you don't cry every day. You might smile once in a while. You might feel like, I can do this. I can try again. And while there are no guarantees, I want you to know that it is possible to make your dream come true. I can tell you firsthand that getting pregnant again and having another child is probably one of the most scary experiences in your life, because as you're going through a subsequent, you will never forget everything that happened with the pregnancies you lost. When people might say to you, well, you can always have another baby, or all those platitudes, remember that these people are hurting so much. And while you don't know what's going to happen, you don't know what's in their past, you don't know what's in their future, you can support them by being gentle and kind, by telling them you may not understand what they're going through, but you are there to support them. You're there to let them cry, hold their hand, help them with other children. If there are other children, take them to the park or away for a couple of hours so the parents can have just some time to grieve, just some time to take a shower or a nap. Probably the best gift you can give to your friend, colleague, or client. Give them the opportunity to talk if they want to. Never minimize the grief that they are feeling. Some people will tell you, it's been 6 months, it's been a year, it's been 5 years. Shouldn't you be over this by now? I can tell you firsthand, you never get over a pregnancy loss. You learn to live with it. But I can still tell you everything that happened on that day in March of 1995 when our daughter was stillborn. I can tell you everything that I felt, the people that were around me, who was supportive and who wasn't. And that's part of the reason I'm here today, is to share with you tips and tricks that you can use if you encounter one of these situations. At this point, open your eyes, come back to the present, and I will gladly accept any questions. Okay, great, awesome.
So thank you, Nancy, for just using your own way of trying to get people understanding what that experience is like, and also sharing some of the things of what not to say within your presentation. And so, as Nancy said, I'd like to open up time for any kind of questions or comments from the audience. So you can either raise your Zoom hand or put the question in the chat. We have sort of a few moments. And I know Empty Cradle has a resource page that Stephanie's going to put in. So there's a lot of stuff in there. And so if you also, along your ways, know any resources on the topic, please place those in the chat too, and we'll put those in the meeting notes. And so we have a question from Rihanna, if I said that correctly, hopefully.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, for me, like from my own experiences and also sometimes other people's experiences, even hearing like the repeat of the scenarios we had to go through is quite like triggering for me. Like when you were describing your story, it's kind of like I'm getting into that kind of freeze mode because it's kind of not exactly the same as what I went through, but it's still like I know so many parallels, and it really hurts. Like that's the most painful part. And I don't like I like, you know, sharing stories, but like, you know, does it, you know, ever feel better? And is there ever like a time when like you know, like there's like maybe it's too triggering to like keep sharing often, or like how do you like find the kind of healthy like space, because like it's like emotionally difficult for me to like both share and hear, like especially related to the trauma of like what happened to my child, like, in a medical setting. Yeah.
Thanks, Raina. Yeah, it can be triggering to hear other people's stories, but it can also be very healing. And the reason that Empty Cradle incorporates sharing stories within the meetings, two of those reasons are to give significance to the brief lives of the children we loved, wanted, and lost, but also to it's a giant step in the healing journey. Does it ever get better? Yes. Maybe not better, but maybe different. And you know what? The feelings you feel, however you are feeling, are completely valid. You are the one that knows yourself best. And it's okay to say, this is too triggering for me. I can't be part of this. But we encourage you to share and talk with each other, because part of the reason that we are in this situation is our society does not know how to handle grief. We'd rather sweep it under the rug than deal with it. And we all know that if you keep sweeping things under the rug, what's going to happen eventually is the bump in the rug is going to be so high, you're going to trip over it. So as hard as it is, it's healthier to deal with the emotions and work through the emotions on your own, with your significant other, with a support group, with a professional counselor, whatever you find works for you. It's best to deal with the emotions sooner rather than later to ensure that you can move forward. Does that kind of help, Raina?
Yeah, I understand the importance of sharing. I was just trying to reflect back to my own experience, where like the initial like sharing of that trauma really helps me. Like the first time I got in a group in person and shared, like we were all sharing like our baby's stories, and it was really healing to be in the presence of people and like have space for each other and support each other and share the like the traumatic. But sometimes like when people, like I've had situations before, like on Facebook or somewhere, where someone commented like, oh, how did she die? And then when in that situation, when I wasn't really offering to share it, and it felt like I was being kind of pressured to explain it, I think it felt really bad, because I'm going through that trauma again to recall everything, to, you know, type it to her. And that felt bad to me, like that I'm being made to relive those experiences that were very hard for me, versus like when I chose to share it myself in a specific setting, in a, you know, with a specific group of people holding space for me, that was healing for me. So there's like, yeah. So what I'm comparing sometimes is like, sometimes it feels overwhelming to, like when I feel like I have to describe like how my daughter died, that's like overwhelming. But when I feel like it's something I need or want to share, then that's healing. Yeah.
Right. Thank you for sharing that. I feel sorry for people in this day and age with social media, because social media takes such a large role in our lives. And as Raina said, sometimes we just don't feel like sharing. And it's okay to say, you know what, we can talk about that sometime in the future. I'm not prepared right now. One of the things that I found really helpful was to pre-plan what I was going to say. One of the most difficult questions bereaved parents get asked is, do you have any children, or how many children do you have? And it took me a long time to get comfortable saying, I got the privilege of raising 2, but I have 3 more that wait for me in heaven. but that might not work for everybody in this room. We are all different. So in planning my presentation today, I tried to incorporate as many different scenarios that could work as I possibly could, rather than trying to think about what my own scenario was and how to fit that into the presentation. So that's where I was going from.
That's great. Thank you, Nancy. And I like that response of saying like, I'm not comfortable sharing at this time. I think that's so important to be able to do. And you're basically saying setting boundaries with other people because a lot of times they don't know. And so you need to be able to set boundaries to what you're comfortable for. So you're not forcing yourself to overshare and to sort of relive some of those emotions in maybe a public setting. And so I'm curious just personally about Empty Cradle. So what groups go on? Is it virtual? Is it in person? How do you support those within the community?
So Empty Cradle was founded in 1991 by a lady named Patty Lou, who had suffered a stillbirth at term. And she knew she needed help. And she kind of figured she couldn't be the only person who had ever lost a baby. So she asked her church if they could borrow a room, and she put an ad in the local newspaper, and Empty Cradle was born. By the time we joined in 1995, our first meeting, there was a full conference room. And as Raina said, we were encouraged to share our story of what brought us to the meeting. And then from there, we talked about whatever was on our mind at the moment. So when I open an Empty Cradle meeting, again, I will tell them that this is a safe place to share your thoughts and your feelings, your questions, and your story, and share your children with us. You're not obligated to share, but we encourage you to do so that it's part of the healing journey, and to bring significance to the brief meaning or the brief time that your child did occupy the world, for lack of a better term. And then we will, after everybody has had the opportunity to share and ask questions, and I will tell them in advance, ask all the questions you want. I can't guarantee that I have all the answers. In fact, I may not have any of the answers, but I will do my best. And if I can't find the answer, I will do some research and get you the answers you are looking for. Other than, of course, the question, why did this happen to me? And I don't think our medical community can answer that question yet either. I long for a day when Empty Cradle will no longer be needed, where pregnancy loss will only be something we read about in textbooks. But although that is my New Year's wish every year, I have yet to see that happen in the last 30 years. So maybe tomorrow.
Well, I think these conversations really help people understand the importance of it and the depth and of the grief that people can feel following these. And I like after I've done some research myself on it, and I remember asking some of my sisters and my mom just about if that's ever happened to them. It's never come up, and of course it has. And of course, like it was meaningful to them, and they had grief, through that. And I thought that was really interesting. It never really came up. Um, in any of the conversations I've had with them until I sort of had to ask. And so it's interesting what people will keep to themselves. And that's sort of why I guess this grief is disenfranchised in a lot of ways.
Do I have time to share two quick stories?
Yes. Okay.
So Patty Lou and I were doing a presentation at BC Women's Hospital, similar to this many years ago. And I couldn't help hearing the woman behind me just sobbing. And I turned to her during the coffee break and I said, I sense that this touched you quite deeply. Would you like to share your story with me? And I was so new at this time. I had no idea what I was doing. And she said to me, 22 years ago, I had a miscarriage. And she said, I never got to grieve that baby. They just told me to forget about it and move on with my life. And she says, I still think about that baby so many years later. I never got to grieve. I didn't know if it was a boy or a girl. And it still hurts. And this brought it all back. So thank you for giving me the chance to know that I can seek for help. A friend of ours has 5 daughters, and no one ever questioned the fact that she had 5 daughters and that they were a certain age apart until after I lost Angel. she and I were talking privately, and she said to me, I had a loss as well. She said, I had a son, and I never got to grieve that loss. They just told me to, forget about it. It's over. It's done. There's nothing you can do about it, and move on. And she said, I see you talking about it now and how much it's healed you over the months. And she says, I'm so proud of you. And I was so honored to have her share that with me, because again, she'd kept it inside her for so many years because society doesn't know how to handle grief.
Yeah, and I think too, one of the things I've noticed is that there's the saying that you're not supposed to tell anyone that you're pregnant for the first trimester because there's a higher risk of the baby dying. But if no one knows, how are you supposed to get support at the same time? And so it's like the double-edged sword where you're keeping something hidden, and if it happens, well, no one's there to sort of reach out for support either. And so I thought that was really interesting, just as you were talking. And so, thank you so much, Nancy, for sharing and being here and providing us some understanding about this not well known type of loss. And
Welcome.
so, I want to thank also, or I want to give the floor to Nicole, who's also here, and Peter, if you'd like to come forward. And we're going to just bring you also in to talk about your lived experience. We've heard a little bit about Nancy's. And so, Nancy, you can also stay here and answer any kind of questions that may be posed for you. So I'd first like to start by asking Nicole if you would really, tell us about your story of within this topic and the grief that you experienced, and if you did get any kind of support and what that looked like.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Joshua, and great job, Nancy. That was really impactful, your presentation. Yeah, so hi, everyone. My name's Nicole. I started my journey with children in 2010. My husband and I were very fortunate. We were able to get pregnant right away, and we had our daughter Peyton at that time. And pregnancy went fairly well, nothing concerning. And we always decided that we wanted to try to have our children close in age if we could control it that way. And yeah, so it was 2.5 years later, we got pregnant again, and no problems getting pregnant as like the first time. And we were really hoping to have a boy. Our daughter Peyton was a girl, and we were like, if we could have one of each, that would be ideal. But obviously we were happy just to have a healthy baby. We wanted to find out the sex right away. So at the 5-month mark, we found out we were having a boy, and we were super excited. We had a name picked out. His name was Tristan. And pregnancy was going really well. I was just super busy with work, working full time, and having a toddler at home. And at 6 months, I had gestational diabetes got diagnosed. But other than that, it was in control. And Tristan was just measuring a little bit small, but I'm a smaller person, so that was to be expected. And it was a month before I was going to go. I was planning to have Tristan. I decided to go on maternity leave a month early. So I was on my last day of work, and I was at the 35-week mark, and I noticed my son wasn't moving, and he was very quiet. And typically Tristan was a very active little boy. And so I thought to myself, okay, something's up here. Maybe he's coming early, because our daughter Peyton, she slowed down at the end, and it's exactly what happened. I went into labor, and we ended up having her. So I was thinking in my head, okay, I'll just go to the maternity clinic, get him checked out. Everything should be fine. But in my gut, I knew something was off, but trying not to get myself too upset or worried. And I was just doing a quick stop into work. We sent our daughter to daycare. My husband, I told him to go to work. It's no worries. I'll send you updates. And that's when my whole world turned upside down. I got to the hospital. They couldn't find his heartbeat. And then they said they could only pick up mine. And they thought, well, he actually might be coming early. Sometimes baby's heartbeat will coincide with yours. So you might be having him today. So on my mind, I'm still thinking hopeful, but okay, he's coming a month early, but that's all right. As long as we can have him here healthy. And then all of a sudden nurses are flooding in, doctor comes flooding in, and they said, we need to take you down to the ultrasound room right away. When is your husband coming? And I said, he should be here soon, but just take me down, and we'll meet up with him after. So we get down there, similar situation like Nancy brought up, go into the ultrasound room, and you could hear a pin drop. Dead silence. And I remember looking at the ultrasound tech. I'm like, what is going on? What is wrong? And she says, I'm so sorry, but your son's heart isn't beating and we don't know why. And I was with the nurse was with me at the time. And I just remember just completely going numb. And I was like frozen. And they wheeled me back upstairs. And that's when my husband had arrived with my mom. And I just remember crying and saying, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. He's dead. He died. And we didn't know why. We had no reason why. And I was told that I could either try to deliver him naturally, which was my goal, or have a C-section. And so immediately my mind was thinking, okay, if I get a C-section, I have to heal, and it's going to take me longer to get pregnant again. I was already thinking about getting pregnant as soon as I could so we could get our son back. That was my rationale. Long story short, I was talked into having a C-section because they were concerned it would be too traumatic for me. And thankfully they did, because turned out our son Tristan's umbilical cord was wrapped around his abdomen and his neck. And if I had gone into active labor, I could have died. So in my mind, I see as Tristan's passing was he saved my life, because I had it very much in my birthing plan that I was going to do a natural labor and delivery. And so in that moment, when just holding my son, and he was 4 pounds 9 ounces, and he was like a beautiful little baby boy, and nothing was wrong with him, and he looked just like our daughter Peyton, and it was just the most devastating situation I've ever had to deal with in my entire life. I never thought I'd have to bury one of my own children. And having to explain to my 3.5-year-old that her brother had died, and explaining that to her, she was so excited to see her brother. I've dealt with a lot of tragic loss in my family, but never losing a child. And it just tipped me over the edge. So I ended up going into a very deep depression. Got diagnosed with severe anxiety, and I also had PTSD. So I was really not even wanting to leave my house, because I was 9 months along. Everybody knew I was pregnant, and I didn't want to have to run into people to then tell them this traumatic story. I didn't want to upset other people as well as myself. And then my daughter, because my daughter was 3.5 and she went everywhere with me. So it got to a real point where I could barely function. And thankfully I had my daughter. I had a living child at the time to really help me get out of it. And I had a lovely support of family and friends. I was very fortunate that way. My experience at the hospital was actually very wonderful as well, which isn't always the story I hear from some losses that parents go through. But it was actually through my family doctor who told me about Empty Cradle. And she says, I really think you should go to this support group. I think it would be really helpful for you. And honestly, the first thing I said was, why the heck would I want to go to a support group who's talking about everybody's children who had died? How is that going to make me feel better, if not worse? I'm already in a terrible situation. And I'm not feeling well. I don't want to hear other traumatic stories. But my husband and I ended up going, and it was similar like Nancy's first experience. The room was flooded with people. Unfortunately, there was a lot of people. It was a very overwhelming experience, but it also was a very healing process. I felt like I belonged somewhere. I felt like I wasn't going crazy. I felt like people understood where I was coming from, and the thoughts that I was thinking and what I was experiencing wasn't abnormal. It actually was very normal part of grief. So it allowed me to give empathy to myself and to allow myself to grieve, because I was so focused on trying to fix myself to get better so I could have another child and move past it instead of being in it and getting the healing from it, right? So I joined the group, and it's been 9 years. We lost our son Tristan in May 30th, 2014. And I have never looked back. Empty Cradle has been an amazing support for myself and my family. And I'm one of the, I sit on the board with Nancy, and we help facilitate a lot of, just activities and events for people and be there as a contact. I did, for support for myself, I accessed a grief counselor, and also I was part of the reproductive loss unit at Royal Columbian, and received counseling support and attended groups on anxiety there. We did decide to have another child. So 2 months later, after we lost our son, Tristan, we got pregnant again and had our daughter, Kaylee, who is now 8 years old. So we have 2 girls. And when I go out into public and people ask me how many children I have, I always say I have 3 children. I always include Tristan in that because I want him to be recognized as part of the family. So I say I have 2 living children and one who's passed away. So yeah, and I just continue to be a part of any sort of active opportunities I can be a part of, just to help others going through that grief and pain. Because it's been 9 years for me, but I still have times where it's really hard and it hits me, and I really miss him. And yeah, it's important to be able to remember and celebrate him. We do a ceremony every year for him and celebrate him. We do a birthday party, and just do things in memory of him. So yeah, so that's my journey and that's where I'm at. So I'm open to any questions or anything that people may have.
Thank you, Nicole, so much for sharing. Like I can't imagine like how difficult those moments are. Um, that you're just like you're in this like like you want that dream, right? You want to say try again, but you have this grief that's just like building up, and it's like who do you talk to? And so I'm really happy that it was your doctor that sort of suggested Empty Cradle. And I think in my mind, I want more doctors to know where to send people who are grieving this type of loss and also other types of losses. But a lot of times they don't, and they don't know where to sort of send that. And so hopefully that changes within our culture a little bit more, where we understand who's providing that type of support. Even though there's not a lot, at least something is better than nothing. And so I took that as a really amazing moment that really helped you to be here in many ways. And so we do have a question from Shailene.
Hi, thank you so much for sharing your story. I really appreciate your perspective. I'm a grief counselor here with Alberni Hospice, and I have had a alarming number of referrals for pregnancy and infant loss recently. And when you mentioned that you'd accessed a grief counselor before, I was curious if there's anything about that experience that was particularly helpful for you that might be good for me to know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. Great question. I mean, it wasn't easy for me to find a grief counselor, to be honest with you. I had reached out to a lot and they didn't even want to touch me. They were just like, I'm sorry, I don't have a background in this. I don't think I can support you and I don't want to cause any harm. So it took a lot of digging for me to find someone in my area. And because of my background, I advocate for supports for families that I provide supports to. So I felt like I had a little bit of that educational background to know where to go and how to navigate and speak up for myself. But honestly, a lot of people who are in that state can't even like sometimes get out of bed or like pick up the phone or go on the internet. They don't even know where to go. So it's really hard to find those supports. So it actually inspired me to go into counseling. And I'm actually taking my master's right now in counseling so I can be a grief counselor for bereaved parents. So because there's just not enough of us out there. So I'm so thankful that you can be there for other people who really need it. And we need to have more out there because it is really difficult, I find, to find supports.
That's really awesome that you are, using your own experience to help other people now. I'm wondering about when you did find a counselor at one point. Yeah. And
Yeah.
so was there anything about their approach or any kind of exercises or anything that they did with you that you found helpful?
Allowing me to share my story and go into detail. I think sometimes people who go through pregnancy loss, they don't want to upset people or maybe traumatize them because of the details. Sometimes it can be pretty graphic. But for me, I needed to get everything out of what I witnessed, what I saw, even just like I remember stuff people were saying during my surgery, because it was like, yeah, they were having conversations that they shouldn't have been having when they're performing the procedure, I remember everything. So it was really important for me to get it all out, and to have that space to do that and feel safe. Really just talking about my journey, and then also about creating boundaries. So for, as it's been mentioned, even just like with Raina sharing her story and Nancy talking, is that I really learned to set boundaries with people, and let them know that, I'm sorry, I'm not comfortable talking about this right now, or I don't want to go out to this place because I'm not wanting to be around a lot of people. Just really advocating for myself and letting people know when they might have said something that they think was supportive, but actually was very harmful. That was hard for me because I didn't want to upset other people, but I felt like they really needed to know that that's not okay to say. So it really, just giving me the support to like have a voice. I found that to be very impactful.
I like that aspect of empowering someone to let people know when they've said something that's upsetting, because we hear that so much of the really distasteful things people say that they think they're supposed to, and it's not helpful, and so they keep doing that over and over with different people, not knowing that that's actually more harmful. So I like that idea of, maybe they'll be upset, maybe they'll feel some guilt, but that's not your responsibility to fix that. Yeah,
Exactly.
thank you, I appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Nicole. Now we're going to bring Peter up to sort of share his experience.
Incoming. Okay. You've heard some really good information so far. One of the things about a number of you are involved with palliative care. And in a palliative situation, there's a lot of time sometimes to get your head around the fact that this is an end-of-life situation. And sometimes that's true with pregnancy or neonatal loss. A child is born and they say this child may only live a couple of weeks, and they've got a couple of weeks to get their head around it. But a lot of times there was no preparation. This came out of left field, and what you planned, an 80-year life, you were going to be the ones to launch this child on their entire life and to be the biggest influence in that life, especially in the younger years. And this is not a launch, this is a recovery mission now. What do we do? This is unexpected. I'm the dad. I try to protect my wife from all sorts of things that hurt. And I can't protect her from this. I can't intercept. I can't change it. It's just a recovery. And I'm not good at recovery. And now there's a holiday coming up and we have to go to the office Christmas party. We've got to deal with a whole bunch of people who saw a large belly earlier or have been told that there was a large belly earlier, and now there is nothing. What do we do? How do we deal with a delay of plans? What do we explain? How much do we explain? Results may vary. If I sit on the bus next to somebody and they ask how many kids I have, I'm not going to give them the whole story. I might say, well, it's taking a while. We hope to start a family soon. Not always do I want to give the whole story. How many kids do you have? Are we talking whole numbers? Are we talking fractions? But anyways, then you get home and there's the room. Next to your bedroom, there was another bedroom. That's why you moved into the place with 3 bedrooms. And the room is unoccupied, except for a few baby shower gifts that you have to return, keep, ask, what do you do with that? There's pictures of Eeyore and Tigger on the wall, or maybe strawberry shortcake. And the furniture is still set up. You have to look at that every day unless you shut the door. Is that room never going to be occupied? When will it be occupied? Will it be another false start? We don't know. If you've had end of life for an older family member, it's expected, but this was not expected. This was a different ending than you ever thought would happen. And this can really knock a guy, it can knock a family, it can knock our relationship into a tizzy. It's hard when somebody else has seemingly made more progress than you or less progress than you, and you don't know how to bring the other one up to speed. And always on TV, they've solved every crime by dinner time. They've solved this if it's a 2-hour movie, it's done and everybody's on with the rest of their life. It's happy within 2 hours, 90 minutes plus commercials. And this is not necessarily so. This could take a few months. It could take a few weeks, and well, it could be a few days. I had to go back to work the next week. And the day before, the working day before was a Thursday, I went in and I had to explain to them, look, there's going to be a funeral tomorrow. And so I would really like that whole day off. I know I was planning to come back after a couple of days, but I need that extra day. And while I'm talking, somebody who had a holiday week off comes running in with his 4-month-old boy dressed in a soccer uniform. And he's anxious to show his proud son off to everybody in the office. And we're all standing near the top of the stairs, and he's bounding up the stairs. And the person who intercepted him was not who I thought it would be. I didn't think they'd have that sense in them. He felt very sorry. I had to explain to him, because you don't want to hurt everybody else. You're hurting. But one of your focuses is not to let everybody else hurt. So I had to explain to him, look, this is bittersweet. I'm so happy for you. I'm not sure I want to hold your son. You might not get him back anyway. And it was a very, very awkward moment, and there will be awkward moments. So that's basically some of the things that are very difficult to deal with. The fact that these are not typical bereavements because they were unexpected and oh so young. One last thing I'd like to mention, this is a hole that people are trying to climb out of. But postpartum depression is an equal opportunity condition. If somebody's in a hole and suddenly postpartum is sucking them down further, you as counselors, as friends, as acquaintances, if you notice such a thing, make sure that they're getting proper care, because a chemical condition on top of an emotional roller coaster is a very difficult and possibly dangerous thing. Make sure you are listening for clues. If you miss it, that's not unexpected. But if you notice a clue and say, I wonder if it's postpartum, make sure somebody is checking. Thanks for your time. And are there any questions for one of the dads? I'm not every dad, but I am one dad.
Thank you, Peter, for sharing and bringing up too, like the challenges of what do you do with the gifts, what do you do with the room, and that in itself, right? What that would do to someone every time they walk by. Just the reminder constantly. With that, we do have a question. I wonder if Grace is able to share. She has they have a question on grief and loss education.
Yes, I do. So thank you all for sharing your stories. Storytelling is definitely a part of the journey through grief. I'm just curious with Empty Cradle, if you have an education component in your or is it just storytelling? Like, I'm just curious about it. If you have a facilitator that gives, is it like a 6-week program, or is it like come and go kind of thing? I'm just curious about that.
Thanks for the question, Grace. We don't actually have a set like 6-week, 12-week program. The only thing I request is that people contact me first. And the process goes, you email me and tell me you've had a loss. The first thing you're going to receive is an email from me telling you how sorry I am that you had to contact me, but how glad I am that you were able to reach out. I will send you an organization brochure and a copy of our monthly newsletter. Now, our monthly newsletter contains articles that I have found that I believe are relevant, and the best of those are also put on our resources page on our website. And Stephanie will be sending out a link to that resource page as well, so you can see what's on there. We have had the occasional guest speaker come and present, but for the normal each month meeting, I will send out the newsletter, and basically I will base that newsletter on what's going on in the calendar that time of year. So my December newsletter will be based on coping through the holidays, or if somebody has had a particular loss in the group. So when a recent mom had a traumatic loss in that it was a genetic termination that needed to be done. So her and her husband actually had to make the decision to end the pregnancy because of the life-threatening consequences to the baby. A couple of months later, I did an article on a genetic termination because I want to give as many people the opportunity to learn from others' experiences as I can. Now, having said that, I need to tell you that my only experience is what I went through and running this group. I have no medical background, and sometimes that makes life a little bit difficult. I'd love to have the opportunity to work in tandem with a doctor that would be there to help me with those specifically medical questions. But so far, although I've reached out to a few people, I haven't really had anybody say, yes, I'd love to be part of your research community. I'm not a researcher. I'm a mom, and I'm a disabled mom because I'm also visually impaired. So doing research has never been my favorite activity. But I will give what I can to support these parents in memory of my three children, our three children, and in support of the ones that we got to raise.
Thank you very much.
And since I have just one quick question. Do you know any other groups or programming in BC that maybe runs one of those 6 to 8 week programs that are so typical within, like, I know hospices will run those and other bereavement organizations?
There is a counselor in the Vancouver area who, well, let me put it this way. I know of two, a counselor in Vancouver and a counselor in Kelowna, who may offer specific programs. One of the resources that I hope is on my resource list is the Butterfly Run BC. And Butterfly Run is a new group that started about 3 years ago to do a fundraising run every year to raise money to put towards programs in pregnancy and infant loss. One of their members, Anya, is a certified counselor, and she does offer a program in the Lower Mainland. They are also always posted in my newsletter. So if anything comes up, members who receive my newsletter will find out about it. And anyone can receive the newsletter simply by sending me an email. My contact information will be given to each of you with the resources on this presentation. So, and if you need help in any way that I can support you, please do not hesitate to contact me. I will do my best. And together we can work wonders in supporting parents who have suffered a loss.
Well, thank you for that. It seems like there is a Susanna Quinsnell has a pregnancy infant loss support group, and Abbotsford Hospice, I know, has one running, and I think Canuck
Awesome.
Place might too. So I think it's going to be, actually, it's one of those things. It's being informed of who else has actually started some of these groups in the meantime. So in case someone can't be in or drive to Vancouver, there's other organizations and places that they can go to also. And I just want to mention too, mygrief.ca has a pregnancy and infant loss series on modules 17, 18, and 19, which is really nice to see because it's really trying to increase awareness of, in an educational sort of sense, on what people may be going through. So I want to thank everyone that was able to present today. So Nancy, Peter, Nicole, thank you just so much for sharing your stories. It's impacted me. I learned a lot, and just the courage it takes to share. It's beautiful to see that you are in a different place. You said you're not better, but you're in a different place, but you're providing support for your community, and that really opens my heart to sort of that, that has made such a, you're making such a difference in other people's lives with your own experiences. And so just to wrap up, we hope everyone enjoyed the session, and we ask that you complete a short survey. And so there's going to be a link that is put in the chat. And so registration for the next session in the series, titled Loss and Grief During the Holidays, is scheduled for Tuesday, December 5th at noon. And so to be notified of any other sessions, feel free to subscribe to the BC Center of Palliative Care's newsletter. And our aim is to provide a copy of this presentation recording, session summary notes, and other resources to you in the next 7 working days. So watch your email for any of that information, and visit the center's website for more upcoming ECHO sessions. So once again, thank you everyone for just being here and being a part of this. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Josh.
Josh, just so quickly too, our meetings are also available via Zoom, and we do have people in the group that are from as far away as Ontario and California and most of BC. So if people
wow.
want a place that they can go online, they can come to us as well.
Oh, that's helpful. Thank you.